Hello, my name is Devin Engel at Rapid Point of Sale, and today I'd like to introduce you to our Klaviyo connector. Klaviyo is an email marketing platform that can be used to send marketing emails such as advertisements or transactional emails such as receipts. When you first log into your Klaviyo account, it'll look a little bit like this. There's three quick things that I'd like to touch on: profiles, lists and segments, and flows. Profiles are just like Counterpoint customer records, and in fact, all four of these customers listed in Klaviyo have been pushed up from Counterpoint to Klaviyo. You can click on them to see a little bit more detail about what has been synced. This is all customizable, but in this case, we have synced up an AR balance and a loyalty points balance. You can also see some other information. You can tell that the profile is assigned to the Counterpoint email list and that this customer has purchased several things with us. There's 3 tickets and even an order here. You can also expand the ticket or the order to see more details about it. For example, if you scroll down here, you can tell that what was purchased on this ticket included items in the category of candies. There were Skittles for the item description. You can see the item number, primary vendor, and subcategories. This is also configurable, and some of this can be adjusted to meet your needs as well. Here, under lists and segments, you'll see that there are 3 lists that Klaviyo automatically creates, and then there's 2 that we have created. If you're not using SMS marketing, you won't have this list, but if you are, you'll have both of these 2. Here in the Counterpoint email list, you'll see that there are 4 profiles subscribed to the Counterpoint email list. Here under settings, you can see that the list ID is present, and that will also be added to your Klaviyo connector in Counterpoint, so it's important to know what your list ID is. And you can review your consent status. So for this Counterpoint email list, we have it set to single opt-in. This means that the customer is not going to get an email notification when they're subscribed to the list. They'll just automatically be added to it. If you selected double opt-in, new subscribers would get a confirmation email and they'd have to click a link to be added to the list. The next thing I want to show you are flows. Here we have 2 flows set up, one for eyewear purchases and one for email receipt. If we access eyewear purchases, we can see that there is a trigger for when someone Counterpoint ticket created, which is Klaviyo's way of saying, when someone does this action, such as has a Counterpoint ticket created for them, and we can set up an additional filter. So here we have, and an item subcategory contains eyewear. So they've purchased something on this ticket that included an item in a subcategory of eyewear. And then when this happens, send this email. And the email is fully customizable as well. So this sends out an email immediately after someone has purchased something in this flow. One of the other flows we can look at is email receipt. And this is a way of setting up a transactional email. Setting up a transactional email is a lot more complicated because there are more fields to consider. So again, we have when someone has an action of Counterpoint ticket created, and here we don't have any additional filters. We're going to send them an email receipt. And the email receipt has to be configured in Klaviyo. This does require someone with a bit of HTML knowledge to be able to set this up well. We can help you with it, but if you have someone on staff, that's even better. We do quote for the work of helping you set up an email receipt. Here you can see that our email receipt, when we're previewing it, has a field that would be automatically populated with the store name, the ticket date, the ticket number, the line items, the quantity, the price, your totals, and so forth. Now, let's take a quick look at how all of this data gets from Counterpoint into Klaviyo. You're probably quite familiar with the Counterpoint customer functionality. and you probably know how to access your Counterpoint customer records. What will be new to you is that the Counterpoint customer record will now have a button called Klaviyo Customers once your Klaviyo connector is installed. And this takes information from the Counterpoint customer record and assigns it to a Klaviyo customer record, specifically the email address, and if provided, the mobile phone one can come over as an SMS number. Then the rest of this information is specific to Klaviyo. For example, if the customer has already been synced to Klaviyo, then it will have a Klaviyo profile ID here. If Klaviyo determined that the email address or the phone number were invalid, you'll see check marks in these boxes. You'll also see the sync status, whether or not the Klaviyo customer record encountered an error or if it's actively syncing. You'll also see the last sync date, which is in UTC time as kind of a universal standard. Typically, this is displayed a few hours ahead of your own time zone. You can also see what the profile status is. In this case, we can see that this one is active. And you can see in these next two sections, we have information about email marketing. The first section is specific to the Counterpoint email list and tells you whether or not the customer is subscribed or unsubscribed. And the next section is about SMS marketing and also shows you the same. If you want to try to change a consent status, you can use one of these two boxes, which we call our action boxes. The opt-in to marketing is an action box that will try to push the customer record up as subscribed, or opt out, typically unsubscribed. So for this example, we could push up opt out of marketing. And when we click save, you'll see that the sync status goes from 0 to 1 because the customer record will have to be resynced. Once the sync is complete, this box will go back to empty so that it can be used again in the future as needed. The very last thing to show you down here is a transactional email box. And this is for this specific customer, and it is listed as always send email receipt. This does not actually have any functionality in Counterpoint or in Klaviyo, but it is a flag that can be used to filter which customers get email receipts in Klaviyo. So if you have email receipts configured, this flag may be helpful to you. In Klaviyo, we'll go back to the profile, and we can see that that is pushed up here. Send email receipt equals Y because that box is checked. And if we were setting up a flow in Klaviyo for email receipts, we could access the trigger and adjust the trigger to have a filter to only send to customers if that flag was set to yes. So in conclusion, once we install the Klaviyo connector, you will have both a Counterpoint customer record and a Klaviyo customer record with additional details about all of the information related to the Klaviyo sync. Next, I want to show you how you can access a list of your Klaviyo customer records all in one spot. To do so, we're going to come over to here, select Connectors, and select Klaviyo. Then we're going to click Klaviyo Customers from here. At this point, we can put it in table view. In table view, you have several columns that you can add and review, but the important part is that you can see every single one of your Klaviyo customers, and you can also go from table view back into a specific customer record. Next, let's review the configuration options available for this connector. Here you can click Klaviyo Configuration. The first field on our Klaviyo configuration is the account name. Some of our clients may have more than one Klaviyo account. For example, if they have separate accounts for retail and wholesale, or perhaps separate accounts for retail, brick and mortar store, and a restaurant. There is an enable checkbox over here. This is just a handy tool for our programmers. If they're doing troubleshooting of some kind, they can temporarily disable the connector. The rest of these fields here are set by the connector, or they're set by the programmers when they are first setting up and configuring your connector. The work group will be set to 231. This is only ever important if you're downloading customers from Klaviyo into Counterpoint. The only thing that is used on the work group is the customer template and allows you to set some default fields. We'll go over all of that with you if you decide to download customers from Klaviyo into Counterpoint. The next section is for enrollment, and most of these fields are just to help you automate some of the process. So if you're creating a Counterpoint customer record and you don't want to have to take time to then also create the Klaviyo customer record, we can automate that process for you using these configuration options. The Auto Create Klaviyo profile has a few different options. The primary one most clients will use will be email only, meaning so long as there's an email address on the Counterpoint customer record, go ahead and create a Klaviyo profile as well. So this will create the Klaviyo customer record in Counterpoint and sync that up to Klaviyo as a Klaviyo profile. The Always Send Email Receipt default checkbox just says, what should this checkbox be on a specific customer record when it's first created? So it just saves you another click. We talked a little bit earlier about the Counterpoint email list and the Counterpoint SMS list in Klaviyo and how these have list IDs. These are displayed here. The Auto Opt-in by Default checkbox just means when the Klaviyo customer record over here is first created for an individual customer, do you want this opt-in to marketing box to be automatically checked? Do you want them to be automatically subscribed to your email or perhaps your SMS marketing? Again, it's just a default box, so it gives you the opportunity to save a click when creating these records, and we can automate a lot of it. The opt-in definitions are typically set to subscribed and unsubscribed. You do have the option to set the email opt-out definition to suppressed. And then if you're using SMS marketing, Klaviyo does require a country code to be part of the phone number. So we'll have to put the country code in this field, and then that'll automatically append it to the phone number that's sent to Klaviyo. If you're going to ever import customers from Klaviyo into Counterpoint, so coming down into Counterpoint, that's what this configuration box would be used for. And the rest of these settings are primarily used by our programmers to really optimize the functioning of your connector. They help determine when the connector runs and how frequently and what kind of log files are kept and how many of them. There's a lot of details in there that they can use to optimize the connector. The last thing to point out here is this ticket history sync information. When we first set up your Klaviyo connector, it will start sending up tickets, the documents from Counterpoint to Klaviyo for all of your customers who have a Klaviyo Counterpoint record and then a Klaviyo profile. But you might want some older ticket history to also be sent to Klaviyo. We use these boxes to configure that. You should never do this on your own because it can get really complicated and there's a big chance of sending duplicated data to Klaviyo. This is kind of a one-time use thing, and we'll go over it with you in a whole bunch more detail if you want to use this functionality. So that's a little overview of how we can configure your Klaviyo connector to automate a lot of the settings on the Klaviyo customer record. If you have any questions about this, we will go over them with you in a full configuration meeting when we first set up your connector. Next, let's look at some of the other things that we can do and control from here in Counterpoint. Next is the Klaviyo Field Mapping Customers Up. This is also best viewed in Table View. Putting this in table view allows you to see every field that is being pushed up from Counterpoint to Klaviyo by the connector. So here you can see that we're sending up the Counterpoint customer record, first name and last name, to the Klaviyo first name and last name. This client is also pushing up address information, AR balance, category code for that customer record, first sale date, last sale date, loyalty points balance, and then the required field here is email address 1, which actually comes from that Klaviyo customer record. This user also has it configured to push up mobile phone 1 and a field that we call the auto email receipt, which I will share some more details about that in a moment. Next is the Klaviyo field mapping customers down. This is also best viewed in table view. It is a little different from the field mapping for customers up. For field mapping for customers up, every field listed on that table is being pushed from Counterpoint up to Klaviyo. For field mapping customers down, this will be pre-populated with several fields. However, it has this action column. As long as these are all set to no action, no data is coming down from Klaviyo into Counterpoint. Customers down is best used by clients who have web-based sign-up forms and they want to have that customer data sync down from Klaviyo into Counterpoint. And this can include just updating existing fields in Counterpoint on existing Counterpoint customer records, or it might even include inserting new customer records in Counterpoint when a matching record does not yet exist. When the connector tries to make a match, it will first look for a matching Klaviyo ID, and if it doesn't find a matching Klaviyo ID, it will try to match on email address 1. If it doesn't find an existing email address and these fields are set to insert, then it will create a new customer record and populate all of the fields that are part of the insert. There are 4 possible things that the action field can be changed to. So we already discussed no action. That means nothing is sent for that piece of data from Klaviyo to Counterpoint. If this is set to insert only, then the field is only set by Klaviyo in Counterpoint when that new customer record is created. Update existing means that if the field is changed in Klaviyo, then it will be updated in Counterpoint, but it is not used when creating a new customer record in Counterpoint. Insert and update means that it will do both. This field is set in Klaviyo in Counterpoint when a new Counterpoint customer record is created, and it's changed. And if it is changed in Klaviyo, then it will also be updated in Counterpoint. In addition to this, if you are importing data from Klaviyo, you may want to be careful about the fact that there could be blanks in Klaviyo where data already exists in Counterpoint. So by default, we have these boxes checked for the connector to always check if there's a blank value in Klaviyo, do not update that or overwrite that with a blank in Counterpoint. Just leave the Counterpoint data as is. Customers down is pretty rarely used. Very often, clients first create their customers in Counterpoint and want to push them up to Klaviyo. Again, the folks with web-based sign-up forms may be interested in this, but there is a risk involved of creating a lot of duplicate customers. If you've been collecting customers in Counterpoint and you weren't collecting their email addresses, and then you create a web-based sign-up form and have that data flow into Counterpoint, it's not going to find a match based on name. And since you weren't creating or adding email addresses previously, it's going to see these new Klaviyo entries as brand new customers, and it will create new customers in Counterpoint. You'll then have to go through and find and merge any duplicates. If you're using our driver's license scan, this can really create some problems for you, so do consult with Rapid before considering whether or not you should turn on customers down. As we've been talking about customers up and customers down, what we're really talking about is that Counterpoint customer record and the Klaviyo customer record going up to Klaviyo and creating the Klaviyo customer profile. So these are things like the name, the email address, the AR balance, the category, any sort of profile type information that you're syncing up. Now that we've gone into a bit more detail about customers up and customers down and Klaviyo profiles, let's talk in a bit more detail about documents. In Klaviyo, you can access an individual's profile and see which documents have been pushed up from Counterpoint to Klaviyo. Klaviyo refers to these as metrics, and you can always tell that it came from Counterpoint because it's clearly labeled Counterpoint. So it'll say things like Counterpoint ticket created and Counterpoint order created. If you expand it, you can see a whole bunch more information about that ticket. We send this information up with every ticket, so it's just built-in part of the connector. You may never use the majority of this information, but it's available in case you need it. For example, if you're setting up email receipts, you may find that you need some of these fields. As you scroll through some of them, they may be familiar, things like gross subtotal or the tax amount. There's also data on how many lines are on the ticket, how many items, that kind of thing. You'll see some of the customer record, the bill to information, the total amount received, these kinds of things. Then there's two that I want to call your attention to. PS doc line, meaning point of sale document lines, and point of sale document payments. These have a whole bunch of subfields within them. So for every line that's on the ticket, there's a whole bunch of information. If there's 10 lines, then there's 10 sets of this information contained within it. Document payment is the same. One ticket could have multiple forms of payment. Someone might pay partly in cash and partly with a card or with a gift card or something like that. And this would document each of those. The problem with this is that the detailed information about the items on the line aren't available in Klaviyo as a filter for a flow. So Klaviyo will let you filter on all of this header type information, but it won't let you filter for this information that's stored within a line. So this gets a bit complicated. To make this work, we've designed a way to pull out some of the key pieces of information that you might need from each line, combine it together, and make it display kind of like one of these overall pieces of information up here. So for example, 3 items were purchased on this ticket, and their 3 different item categories were accessory, candy, and tea. Their item descriptions: green tea, jade oolong, Reese's peanut butter cups, and super cool sunglasses. We've got the 3 item numbers listed here. The primary vendor, only one of these items had a vendor, and it was the candy. And then the item subcategories: chocolate, eyewear, and green for green tea. While all the information up here is just part of the standard connector, the information that we send in this section is configurable. In fact, Klaviyo only allows us to send 8 additional fields like this. They have a limit on the number that we can push up. In Counterpoint, you can access Klaviyo Custom Properties Documents Up. This is another one of those fields, or another one of those tables that's best viewed in table view. And here you can see that we have item categories, item descriptions, item numbers, primary vendor names, and subcategories all selected to send up to Klaviyo as part of those documents. Again, documents are things like tickets, orders, and layaways that get synced to Klaviyo as what Klaviyo calls a metric. We can actually send up to 8 different fields in this top level situation to Klaviyo. So there's about 5 that we have selected by default. These can be changed, and you can choose whichever 8 you would like to have. If you frequently use item attributes or additional descriptions, you might want to rely more heavily on those. If you plan to do some kind of filtering based on barcodes or item numbers, sending emails out based on a specific item that was purchased, these might be more helpful. If you plan to send emails based on which category an item it was in. For example, you want to set up a flow for everyone who has purchased something in the rosebush category from you, then you're going to want to send up categories, or maybe the subcategory breakdown will be more important to you. Again, there's a lot of options here. Klaviyo does limit us to allowing you to select 8 of these. That's not a limit we impose. That's actually part of their limits. Next are Klaviyo custom events. Klaviyo does not allow the scheduling of those email flows based on a specific date. So we created this functionality as a workaround for that. This table can only be configured by a programmer, so you need to reach out to Rapid if you'd like a quote on this. An example use case might be a delivery arriving today reminder. You could have a ticket profile date set up in Counterpoint that your cashiers would then use to identify a scheduled delivery date. Then you could have that attached to a custom event metric in the connector that pushes that specific ticket up to Klaviyo on the delivery date. And then a flow in Klaviyo can trigger that delivery reminder email to the customer. So it's a bit complex, but think about it as a way to perhaps hold back information from Klaviyo and then send it to Klaviyo on a specific date and time so that as soon as Klaviyo receives it, it will send out the email. Next is queued to be sent to Klaviyo. This is just a list of all documents that are going to go up to Klaviyo. They're in the queue to be sent. The connector typically syncs up most documents within 1 minute, but if you get a bit of a backlog or your connector's encountering some errors, they may get stuck in the queue for a bit, and you can take a look at that separately. If you've used any of our connectors in the past, you know that when there is an error or an alert of some kind, we send an alert to the message center, and your messages can always be accessed up here by clicking this little mail icon. If these become annoying or persistent, for example, maybe your connector has encountered an error and it is sending you that same error over and over again, this happens occasionally. You can use this button here to just mark all the Klaviyo messages as read, and then it will stop the pop-up functionality. You should never need to use the Run Klaviyo Connector button. This is really only to be used by our programmers during the testing phase. The connector will sync up new profiles in Counterpoint up to Klaviyo about once every 15 minutes, and it will sync up documents once every minute. So there's really no need for this button other than for troubleshooting purposes so that we can run the connector manually. Last, a customer add on the fly form is used by some of our clients to limit the fields that their cashiers can see. If your cashiers will need to see some Counterpoint or some Klaviyo information in Counterpoint, we can limit that access and do something small like this. It is work that we can quote for you, and we can take any of the fields on the Klaviyo customer record and make them visible here. And then we can limit which users have access to this based on their security codes. So it's not user specific so much as it is security code specific. The next thing I'd like to do is a little review of what we've gone over so far by actually creating a new Counterpoint customer and syncing them up to Klaviyo. So first, let's check our Klaviyo configuration for this connector. We'll push this forward icon to access the Klaviyo configuration record. And we can see that we are set up for auto creating a Klaviyo profile whenever an email address is provided. So if we add an email address to an existing customer record, or we create a new Counterpoint customer with an email address, that means that Counterpoint Klaviyo customer record will automatically get created, which will go up to Klaviyo as a Klaviyo profile. So that saves us quite a bit of effort. We know that the always send email receipt checkbox will be checked by default on that Klaviyo customer record. Of course, we could always uncheck it, but the default setting will be checked. And we'll have our Counterpoint email list and our Counterpoint SMS list, but the only one that we're going to have opt-in by default checked for is going to be the email list. So let's go test this out and see how it looks. First, we're going to go into Counterpoint Customers, and we'll create a new Counterpoint customer. We'll give them an email address. And let's also add a category. We'll save this customer record. And let's check on the Klaviyo customer record. We can see that it's been automatically populated with our email address. And we've got a Klaviyo sync status of 1, meaning that it's pending a sync up to Klaviyo. The opt-in to marketing for email marketing is checked. We know that it's going to go up and try to subscribe it. And as expected, the opt-in to marketing for SMS is unchecked because that was not part of our default configuration setting. But our default to always send email receipt is checked. So now we'll close out of this and give the connector a moment to run. Okay, now that the connector has had a moment to run, let's find that customer in Counterpoint. Here they are. Let's check the Klaviyo customer record. Previously the Klaviyo profile ID was blank because they didn't have one, but now that it's synced up, that Klaviyo profile ID has come back into Counterpoint and we have that recorded here. We also have the sync status now as 0. It's synced. The Klaviyo profile status now reads active. They were subscribed to the email marketing, so that's great. And our always send email receipt checkbox remains checked. If now we wanted to unsubscribe them, we could check the box for opt out of marketing and save it. Then these action boxes are used once and then it's synced and then it's cleared, so they're available for use again. They don't stay checked. Now let's go check this out on Klaviyo to see what it looks like. Excellent. We can see that Nemo, the clownfish, has synced up just now. Let's see what that profile looks like. Profile went up with the email subscribed. We can see that they are subscribed to the Counterpoint list. Our category also went up. Currently, they're a brand new customer. They don't have any loyalty points or an AR balance, but they do have the send email receipt checked. And of course, there's a lot of other fields that could be configured to be sent up to Klaviyo as well. Now, if Nemo makes purchases in Counterpoint in the future, since he has a Klaviyo profile, those purchases will be listed over here. They will appear as metrics with that little gear icon, and they'll say things like Counterpoint ticket created or Counterpoint order created. In addition, if you have flows set up based on those tickets that are created or the orders, then he'll also get emails sent to him. And of course, you can always review your lists and your segments and send out an email to your entire marketing list. So now we can return to Counterpoint. And let's get back to our Klaviyo section here. You can always access that again through connectors and then Klaviyo. There are a few final things that I want to review with you. The first thing is that Rapid is really an expert on the Klaviyo connector, essentially that movement of data between Counterpoint and Klaviyo. We are not really experts on email marketing or utilizing all that wonderful information that we push up. So for advice on designing emails or using the data, For setting up segments or flows, or deciding what is a marketing email and what's a transactional email, you should really consult with an email marketing expert. It's kind of like the equivalent of consulting with a web developer when you're designing your website. An email marketing expert can definitely help you get the most out of Klaviyo. I hope you have found this little introduction to our Klaviyo connector helpful. We have a lot more documentation about the connector that we can share with you, and we're also happy to answer any questions that you may have, so please don't hesitate to reach out.